Okay, let's take a look at this morning's papers and what's making news today with Mary Ann O'Hotter and Edward Adu. Very good morning to you both. Thanks for getting up bright and early. Let's get to it then. Mary Ann, we'll start with you because you've picked out the Observer, and it's quite a stark warning, isn't it? These hidden delays that cancer patients are facing day in and day out.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting one. When I first saw the headline, I thought, oh, well, this isn't new news, that the NHS has massive waiting lists and people are suffering because of it. But actually, it's a really interesting one because it's a study done by Healthwatch England, which is it's a committee of the Care Quality Commission. What they do is take a sample of, admittedly quite a small sample compared to the population of Britain, and find out what their experiences were. And 1 in 7 referred by their GP for cancer investigation have to wait more than a month to even find out what the next steps are. And the problem is that lots of people are falling through the gap. So the GP makes that referral, and then, as the Healthwatch England describe it, they fall into a black hole. So that there's a stall, or the referral is refused, or something glitches in the system. So they basically disappear from the system. So you're sitting at home worrying your mind out, your family are worried, potentially you're getting more ill because you're not getting early or preventative treatment. And no one is waiting to kind of book in that outpatient appointment or that scan or what have you, because you've sort of disappeared from the system. And the challenge is that those people who are affected aren't in the official statistics until now. So this is just a dip sample, but basically you're not on the kind of monitoring of a waiting list because you're not on the waiting list. Now, this is the problem. Because we've kind of got outdated systems. So one of the things they're calling for are digital referral trackers, so that you get some kind of email or some kind of interface where you can see, okay, well, so-and-so has actioned that and this is where you are in the system. Because otherwise you just sit there waiting for a paper letter.
And that's the problem, isn't it? It's still any delays risks lives, and that's the biggest worry for patients all round.
Reference certain people where coroners have said, as a prevention of death, this can't happen again. People whose referral letters have sat in pigeonholes at the hospital, or someone whose outpatient appointment was cancelled 3 times and then subsequently was given a terminal diagnosis. So this has a real world impact, of course.
And I do wonder whether, there's a postcode lottery element to it, where there'll be different experiences for people across the country. Edward, I wanted to touch on driving in London for a moment, because the Sunday Telegraph is going big on Rishi Sunak talking about, I am a Prime Minister, I'm not anti-car, Labour are anti-car, and really polarising and setting themselves apart, obviously, from Labour. But this is going to be a big one at the ballot box, isn't it?
Yeah, he's more or less saying, listen, I'm for you, I'm for the motorist, and he's ordered the Department of Transport to order a review on LTNs, low traffic neighbourhoods. Now, if you haven't come across them there, if in your neighbourhood you probably see like some bollards and some sort of wooden sort of planted areas. Now, these have popped up since lockdown or the start of the pandemic across London, not even just London, but Oxford and Manchester as well. It's got a lot of people enraged because for people who use local roads as rat runs, or for people who use those roads which are being blocked to get in and out, they can't, because they will get a fine and there's cameras. And so the Prime Minister's ordered a review into this, because you mentioned London. A lot of roads across London, in particular, there's one particular borough in North London where the whole area is gridlocked. It's near Arsenal in the borough of Islington. Every time I speak to a cabbie, they always tell me, please avoid that area.
And then, of course, boroughs across the whole country. Manchester, I lived there for 11 years. There's issues with funneling traffic along Deansgate, which is the main high street through Manchester. That's such a big problem for people carrying out work.
It's about consultation. A lot of people have said that this wasn't properly done in the right context, and suddenly all these LTNs have popped up, and it's meant that people are not able to access their local streets, or they have to go round the block. But also connected to this review is about ULEZ, and
Yes.
the Prime Minister is about 2030 that the promise for petrol and diesel cars not to be on our roads, that may not be met. So it's interesting. This may be used as not a ploy, but as in the no pun intended, a trump card to say, well, look, we are for the motorist, and this may be the key for the Prime Minister and for the Tories to say, well, look, in order to get people on our side, we can use this to kind of entice people to say, well, look, we are for motorists and we're not anti-motorist.
Can I jump in there?
Yeah, go for it, Marianne.
I think it's a very cynical ploy, and I think as a public we need to kind of push back against politicians who are trying to set up these either for or against really polarized binaries, because basically it's not a question of are you anti or pro motorist, it's are you anti or pro climate change and the fact that the world is burning. And yes, it will impact us and the way that we have done business as usual, whether that's how you get to the shops.
But Mary, the problem is it's about people who may not necessarily have disposable income. And I agree with you about climate change, but you've got to remember, if someone is doing the night shift, someone who can't even afford to jump on a bus may have a runaround just to get them to their destination, and suddenly they're being told, well, listen, you can't get to the end of your road because it's blocked, or you may have to pay ULEZ to get to the hospital. Those are the people who are concerned, and they're thinking, well, look, am I being listened to?
Honestly, Edward, I think that those people who have a very credible and real concern are in the absolute minority, because I think the other people just don't want to change. They don't want to get on the bus because that's not what they do. And the bottom line is, people die because of poor air quality in London. People around the world are having their lives overturned or losing everything they own, or losing their lives because of the way that we have behaved up until now. And I saw Rishi Sunak earlier this week said, he doesn't want green promises to necessarily affect or place an additional kind of stress on people. It shouldn't change the way people do things. They shouldn't have to think about it. And I'm like, no, that is absolutely wrong. We should be thinking about it every second and every decision we make. And
well, it's certainly going to be an issue. Green policies, as we move through this week, is going to be a big issue, a big talking point for both parties. We're going to explore that later in the show. But Marianne, to the Sunday Mirror, because they're reporting on this 200-mile journey that Rishi Sunak took via helicopter.
Yeah, a lot of the papers are running some version of what is Rishi Sunak's position on green issues. The Times, for example, is running a whole front-page story about his investment in carbon capture potential in the North Sea, potentially reusing North Sea oil and gas installations. But the Mirror is going with the fact that Rishi Sunak apparently has a kind of helicopter lifestyle. He accepted the offer of a Tory donor's private helicopter to fly 200 miles between London and Chester. That is very much a journey that you could do on a train. So in a helicopter, it releases a ton of CO2.
Well, this is the issue that we'll have to explore more, because we are running out of time for now. We'll have more after the break. Do join us.